Welcome to Alternatify, where we dive deep into the pivotal moments of history and ask, what if things had gone differently? Today, we're exploring a scenario that could have fundamentally reshaped the last decade. We're asking, what if Barack Obama had lost the 2012 US presidential election? Instead of a second term for Obama, imagine a different outcome. Imagine Mitt Romney standing on the inauguration stage in January 2013. The ripple effects of such a shift would be profound, touching every corner of American life and its place in the world. Who would be the winners and losers in this alternate timeline? What unexpected consequences might arise? We'll explore key areas like healthcare, foreign policy, and cultural shifts. Prepare to imagine major political moments unfolding under a different leader. To understand this alternate path, we must first revisit the real 2012. The nation was still grappling with the slow, painful recovery from the 2008 financial crisis. Obama faced a tough re-election battle burdened by the economic climate. The Affordable Care Act, signed into law in 2010, remained a major point of contention. It was a signature achievement for Obama, but a rallying cry for opposition. The Tea Party movement was at its peak, fueled by anti-government sentiment and opposition to the ACA. The political climate was already highly polarized, perhaps a precursor to the divisions we see today. This was the backdrop against which the 2012 election was fought. Now let's diverge onto the alternate path. How could Romney have won? Imagine the economic recovery stalling further in 2012. Perhaps an international event, a sudden oil price spike, or a major natural disaster like a devastating hurricane could have tipped the scales. Combine that with a well-executed, perhaps slightly more aggressive Romney campaign. A few key swing states shift by just a percentage point or two. The electoral map turns red in crucial places that went blue in reality. The result, Mitt Romney wins the election. The immediate aftermath would send shockwaves across the nation. For Obama supporters, it would be devastating, a sudden end to their hopes for a second term and the continuation of his agenda. Republicans would be ecstatic, celebrating a victory that seemed just out of reach in reality. The stock market would likely react with an initial dip, entering a period of uncertainty as markets digested the change in leadership and anticipated policy shifts. Speculation would immediately begin about the formation of a Romney cabinet, filled with different faces and ideologies than those who served under Obama. One of the most immediate and significant policy changes under a Romney presidency would be healthcare. Romney campaigned heavily on repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. With a mandate from his victory, this would be a top priority. Romney's plan involved market-based solutions, offering tax credits for individuals to buy insurance and supporting high-risk pools for those with pre-existing conditions. He aimed to give states more control over healthcare policy. The immediate impact could be chaotic. Millions who gained coverage under the ACA might lose it. The insurance market could face significant instability as the existing framework was dismantled before a new one was fully established. The political battle over healthcare would continue, perhaps even intensify. Democrats would fight fiercely to protect elements of the ACA or push for alternative expansions of coverage. Pressure from various interest groups would be immense. Potential outcomes include increased premiums for many, particularly older or sicker individuals, and a significant reduction in the number of insured Americans compared to the ACA's trajectory. The promise of market efficiency might not materialize quickly. The pros of Romney's approach, proponents would argue, include increased competition among insurers and greater individual choice in plans. It aligns with a philosophy of less government intervention in the market. However, the cons are substantial: potential loss of coverage for millions, market instability during the transition, and a continued, perhaps even more bitter, political battle over the fundamental right to healthcare access. Economically, a Romney presidency would mean a significant shift in direction. His platform centered on tax cuts, particularly for corporations and high earners, and deregulation across various sectors. The argument for these policies is that they stimulate the economy. Lower taxes on businesses encourage investment and job creation. Reduced regulation frees up capital and reduces compliance costs. However, questions remain about the effectiveness and consequences. Would the benefits trickle down to average workers? Or would tax cuts exacerbate income inequality and balloon the national debt? Potential outcomes include increased business investment and job growth, potentially boosting the stock market. But there's also the risk of widening the wealth gap, significantly increasing the national debt, and the potential for deregulation to contribute to future financial instability, perhaps even another crisis. The pros, from a certain perspective, are the potential for increased investment, job creation, and a boost to the stock market. It represents a return to more traditional Republican economic principles. The cons include the risk of increased income inequality, a rapidly growing national debt, and the potential dangers associated with reduced oversight in financial and environmental sectors. Foreign policy would also see a distinct shift under a Romney administration. While Obama moved towards a less interventionist stance after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Romney advocated for a more hawkish and assertive approach. Expect a stronger emphasis on military power and a more interventionist role for the US on the global stage. Military spending would likely increase significantly. On Iran, Romney would take a much harder line. The diplomatic path that led to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, under Obama would likely not happen. Instead, expect increased sanctions, military posturing, and a higher risk of confrontation over Iran's nuclear program. Romney famously called Russia America's #1 geopolitical foe during the 2012 campaign. His approach would be confrontational, leading to increased tensions and potentially ushering in a new Cold War era much sooner and more intensely than in reality. In the Middle East, the approach to the Syrian civil war could be different. While Obama hesitated on direct intervention, a Romney administration might have been more inclined to establish no-fly zones or provide more substantial support to rebel groups, potentially drawing the US deeper into the conflict. The pros of Romney's foreign policy, proponents would argue, include a stronger US presence globally and a more decisive response to threats. It projects an image of American strength and resolve. The cons are significant. Increased military spending and potential involvement in more conflicts, strained relationships with allies who preferred Obama's multilateral approach, and the constant risk of miscalculation in volatile regions. Beyond policy, a Romney presidency would usher in notable cultural and social shifts. Expect a more conservative approach to issues like abortion, same-sex marriage, and climate change. The composition of the Supreme Court would likely shift further to the right, potentially at a faster pace. This would have profound consequences for landmark cases concerning civil rights, reproductive rights, and environmental regulations for decades to come. The media landscape would also change. The relationship between the White House and the press would be different. The national discourse might shift, with a greater emphasis on conservative viewpoints and priorities emanating from the executive branch. The impact on specific groups within American society would be significant. Low-income families might face cuts in social programs and a less robust safety net, potentially widening the wealth gap. Minorities could experience a more conservative approach to civil rights and immigration policies, potentially fostering a less inclusive or even hostile climate, depending on the administration's rhetoric and actions. LGBTQ+ individuals might see a potential rollback of hard-won rights, or face a more challenging social and political climate as conservative viewpoints are amplified. Women's reproductive rights would likely face significant challenges, with less support for access to abortion and contraception. The role of technology and social media would also interact differently with a Romney White House. While Obama effectively used these platforms, a Romney administration might have a different strategy, potentially altering the effectiveness of digital communication in politics. Let's analyze the key players in this alternate reality. Barack Obama, as a former president, would still hold influence, but perhaps diminished compared to his real-world post-presidency. His focus might shift earlier to memoir writing, his foundation, or specific advocacy areas, free from the shadow of a successful second term. Mitt Romney would face the immense challenges of governing in a deeply polarized nation. His legacy would be shaped entirely by the successes and failures of his single term, defined by his handling of the economy, healthcare, and foreign policy crises. Joe Biden's path would be fundamentally different. Without serving as vice president for a second term, his political career trajectory would be altered. He might retire, pursue a different role in the Democratic Party, or perhaps attempt another presidential run in a later cycle, navigating a political landscape shaped by Romney's presidency. Looking at the long-term consequences, a Romney victory in 2012 would have fundamentally shaped the 2010s and beyond. The policy decisions made or not made would create a cascade of different outcomes. Would the political landscape today be fundamentally different? Without the specific battles fought and won during Obama's second term, the fault lines and alliances within both parties might have evolved differently. Would the trajectory of populism and nationalism have been different? Perhaps a Romney presidency, with its focus on traditional conservatism, might have either stifled or inadvertently accelerated the rise of populist movements, depending on its perceived success or failure. And what about the 2016 election? This is perhaps the most fascinating question. Would Donald Trump have even run? If he did, would he have faced a different Republican field, potentially including a weakened or strengthened establishment depending on Romney's performance? Would the outcome have been different against a different Democratic nominee? It's impossible to say for sure, but the path to 2016 would be unrecognizable. This exercise highlights the nature of history itself. It is not a fixed, predetermined sequence of events. It is fluid, dynamic, and shaped by choices, contingencies, and the unpredictable interplay of forces. The value of exploring alternative history lies not just in idle speculation. It helps us understand the forces that did shape our reality by contrasting them with what might have been. It's a reminder that multiple possibilities always exist at critical junctures. There are lessons learned from this thought experiment. It underscores the complexities of decision-making at the highest levels and the far-reaching consequences of policy choices. It encourages us to understand the past not as inevitable, but as a series of paths taken. It fosters empathy by imagining different outcomes for different groups of people, and it reminds us of the power of imagination to illuminate the present by exploring the roads not traveled. So, we've journeyed into an alternate history, exploring a world where Mitt Romney won the 2012 election. We've seen potential impacts on healthcare, the economy, foreign policy, and society. It reinforces the idea that history is not set in stone, but is a product of specific moments and decisions. What do you think would have been the biggest change if Romney had won in 2012? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration, please like and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe to Alternatify for more dives into the roads not taken. Thank you for watching. Keep exploring the possibilities.